Hello and welcome to Folklore Sleep Stories. Tonight we're drifting into another ancient tale, one shaped by time, memory, and a touch of magic. Before we begin, if you enjoy these stories and want to help keep this space alive, feel free to like and subscribe, and in the comments, is there a folk tale from your homeland you've never forgotten? It's always beautiful to read the stories that shaped you from every corner of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or crack the window. Let the hum of the world soften. Let go of the day, and let folklore be your lullaby. You find yourself standing beside a river that moves with the unhurried certainty of water that knows its purpose, its banks lined with willows, whose trailing branches brush the surface like gentle fingers combing silk. This is a river that has been companion to human hands for longer than memory can reach. Its waters have powered mill wheels and filled dye vats. Its clay banks have yielded the reeds used for the finest baskets. Its steady song has kept time for countless weavers working by its side. The cottage that will be your home in this story sits so close to the water that you can hear its voice from every room. A constant murmur of contentment that seems to bless all the work done within these walls. It is a weaver's cottage, purpose-built for the ancient craft, with wide windows to catch the northern light and high ceilings to accommodate the great looms that have stood here for generations. This is your cottage now. Though how you came to inherit it exists in that soft space between knowing and feeling that characterizes the most important inheritances. Perhaps it belonged to your grandmother, or her grandmother, before her, passed down through a line of women whose hands knew the secret of turning fiber into fabric, thread into beauty, patience into patterns that tell stories without words. The cottage welcomes you with its familiar scents, the clean smell of wool waiting to be spun, the faint sweetness of the beeswax used to smooth the loom's moving parts, the herbal fragrance of the dyes that hang in bundled bunches from the rafters. Every surface speaks of gentle use and careful tending, the worn wooden floors polished smooth by generations of bare feet, the walls hung with samples of weaving in patterns both traditional and innovative, the windows whose sills hold small treasures, a bird's nest found empty after the young had fledged, shells from the seashore collected on some long-ago journey, pieces of glass worn smooth by the river's patient touch. But it is the loom that draws your attention most strongly, standing in the place of honor beside the largest window like an altar dedicated to the transformation of separate threads into unified cloth. It is old. This loom older than the cottage itself, perhaps, its wooden frame darkened with age and use, its metal parts worn smooth by countless hands. But it is not merely old, it is wise, patient in the way that only tools can be when they have been used with love and respect for generations beyond counting. The loom waits for you with threads already strung, a warp of cream-colored wool that catches the river light and seems to glow with quiet anticipation. Someone has prepared this for you, though you cannot remember who or when. The shuttle rests beside the loom, its wood warm to the touch, as if it has recently been held by loving hands. You settle into the weaver's chair, a simple wooden seat worn smooth and shaped by the bodies of all who have sat here before you, and feel your muscles remember movements they have never made, your hands finding their place on the familiar tools, as if greeting old friends after a long separation. This is the inheritance that goes deeper than property or possessions, the knowledge that lives in bone and sinew, the skills that pass from hand to hand like living things, the understanding that some kinds of work are not just occupation but calling. The first passes of the shuttle feel tentative, uncertain, your hands remembering how to maintain the rhythm that keeps the cloth even and true. But gradually, the ancient dance begins. Left hand lifting the heddle, right hand passing the shuttle through the shed, both hands working together to beat the weft into place. The loom sings its quiet song of wood against wood, thread sliding against thread, the soft percussion of creation that has been the heartbeat of human civilization since we first learned to twist fiber into something stronger than its individual strands. Outside the window, the river flows past carrying the reflection of evening sky, and you understand that this is where you belong. Not just in this cottage, but in this moment, in this age-old rhythm of thread and shuttle, and the patient transformation of many into one. You are a weaver now, heir to a craft that measures time, not in minutes or hours, but in the slow accumulation of threads, each one laying the foundation for all that will follow. The cloth grows slowly under your hands, cream wool, becoming something more than its separate strands. And as you work, you feel a deep satisfaction settling into your bones. This is good work, necessary work, the kind of labor that creates not just fabric, but meaning, not just utility, but beauty. As darkness gathers outside the cottage windows and the river's song grows softer, more intimate, you understand that your real story, the story of the golden thread, has not yet begun, that the foundation is being laid with every pass of the shuttle, every beat of the weft, every moment you spend learning to speak the ancient language of the loom. The cottage holds you in its gentle embrace as night deepens around the weaving river. And somewhere in the willows, something golden catches the last light and waits for the moment when you will be ready to receive the gift it has been keeping safe for longer than you could possibly imagine. 3 weeks pass in the peaceful rhythm of learning, your days shaped by the needs of the loom and the slow satisfaction of watching cloth grow under your hands. You rise with the sun, take your breakfast of bread and honey by the window while listening to the river's morning song, then settle into the weaver's chair for hours of patient work. Your fingers grow stronger, more certain, finding the rhythm that allows mind and body to work together in the meditation that is weaving at its finest. The fabric on the loom develops its own character as you work. Not just the plain weave you started with, but subtle variations in tension and spacing that create texture and depth. Without conscious planning, patterns begin to emerge. Areas where the threads lie closer together, creating denser cloth. Places where they spread wider, allowing light to filter through like sunshine through leaves. Your hands seem to know things your mind has not yet learned, guided by the accumulated wisdom of all the weavers who have worked at this loom before you. Each morning brings new discoveries about the cottage and its surroundings. You find herbs growing wild in the garden that are perfect for dyeing wool, madder for deep red, weld for yellow, indigo that has somehow survived the winters and still carries the secret of blue in its leaves. The river reveals its treasures gradually. Smooth stones, perfect for holding down patterns, clay that dries to exactly the right hardness for making shuttles, willows whose inner bark yields fibre strong enough for the finest threads. But it is on this particular morning, when the mist lies thick over the water and the willows drip with dew like strings of pearls, that you make the discovery that will change everything. You have come down to the river early, drawn by the particular quality of light that photographers and painters chase, but that weavers understand in their bones, the soft even illumination that reveals the true colours of fibre, the honest texture of thread. You are gathering reeds from the riverbank, thinking about the basket you might weave to hold your growing collection of natural dyes, when something catches your eye among the willow branches that trail in the slow current. At first glance, it appears to be just another piece of debris caught by the water's patient fingers, a bit of fishing line perhaps, or a strand of synthetic fabric from some distant laundry. But as you look closer, moving carefully along the muddy bank, you see that this is something entirely different. Snagged on a low-hanging branch, moving gently with the river's rhythm, is a single thread of gold. Not the brassy yellow of artificial metallic thread, not the painted gleam of decoration designed to catch attention and fade quickly. This is gold the way poets mean when they speak of morning light on wheat fields, gold the way alchemists dreamed when they sought to transmute base metals into something precious beyond price. It glows with its own inner light, seeming to gather the soft radiance of the misty morning and concentrate it into a thread so fine it might have been spun from crystallized sunlight. You reach for it carefully, afraid it might dissolve at your touch, or prove to be nothing more than an optical illusion created by water and early light. But it is real, solid, warm beneath your fingers as you gently work it free from the willow's gentle grasp. It comes away easily, as if it has been waiting for this moment, this particular morning, these specific hands to claim it. The thread is longer than you first realized, perhaps 3 feet of gold, so pure it seems to sing in your palm, vibrating with a frequency just below the range of hearing, but well within the range of the heart's perception. As you hold it up to catch the light, it seems to move of its own accord, twisting in patterns that suggest not randomness but intention, as if it remembers being part of something larger, more complete. Where could such a thread have come from? No mill you know of produces anything like this. No dyer's workshop, no matter how skilled, could achieve this particular shade of gold that seems to shift and change as you watch, showing depths and highlights that speak of magic rather than chemistry, and yet here it is, solid and real in your hands. clearly meant for weaving despite its obvious otherworldly origin. You carry it back to the cottage with the reverence due to something precious beyond measure, holding it as carefully as you might hold a butterfly or a soap bubble, firmly enough to keep it safe, gently enough not to damage its essential nature. In the clear light of the cottage windows, it becomes even more beautiful, even more mysterious, casting tiny rainbows on the walls as it moves and catching the reflection of the river flowing past outside. At the loom, you examine your growing fabric with new eyes, trying to imagine how this golden thread might fit into the cream-colored cloth you have been creating. It would be beautiful anywhere, of course. Such a thread could hardly help but be beautiful, but you have the sense that its placement matters, that there is a right way and a wrong way to incorporate such a gift into your work. You spend the morning weaving with your usual cream wool, but your mind keeps returning to the golden thread where it lies on the windowsill, seeming to glow brighter with each passing hour. By afternoon, you can no longer resist the pull of its mystery. You wind it carefully onto a shuttle, your hands trembling slightly with anticipation and something that might be awe. The first pass of the golden thread through the warp is like nothing you have ever experienced. The loom itself seems to sing in a different key, and the thread moves through the cream wool as if it has always belonged there, as if this particular fabric has been waiting its whole existence for exactly this moment. This thread, this completion of some pattern too large for mortal eyes to perceive all at once. Under your hands, the golden thread weaves itself into the cloth with perfect tension, perfect placement, creating a line of light across the cream background that seems to pulse with life. You make only a few passes before stopping, somehow understanding that this thread must be used sparingly, with intention, as part of some greater design that will reveal itself in its own time. As evening approaches and you prepare to bank the fire and rest your hands from the day's work, you find yourself looking forward to tomorrow with an anticipation you haven't felt since childhood. The golden thread has awakened something in you, not just curiosity about its origin, but a sense of possibility, of magic preparing to unfold in ways you cannot yet imagine. That night, you dream of threads stretching across vast distances, connecting hearts and hands in patterns too complex for waking minds to follow. You dream of weavers working in darkness and in light, each adding their own small section to a tapestry that encompasses all the kindness ever offered, all the love ever shared between souls who recognize each other across the apparent boundaries that seem to separate, but never really divide. And when morning comes, you will discover that dreams and waking life are closer than you ever imagined, that some threads, once woven, connect more than just one part of the fabric to another. They connect the work of your hands to the work of hearts you have never met, binding you into a pattern of kindness that has been growing for longer than you could possibly imagine. You wake to sunlight streaming through the cottage windows, and the sound of the river singing its eternal song of water, finding its way to the sea. But there is something different about this morning, something that makes you pause at the window before settling down to your weaving. The garden looks exactly as it should, herbs growing wild and free, morning glory climbing the trellis beside the door, the willow branches trailing their fingers in the water. But there is an energy in the air, a sense of expectation that makes your heart beat a little faster. It is only when you notice Mrs. Bramble's chickens that you understand something unusual has happened in the night. Mrs. Bramble lives in the cottage just downstream from yours, a widow of 70 whose husband left her well provided for in all things, except the strength to manage the small flock of hens that have been her pride and joy for decades. You have watched her struggle in recent weeks to carry the heavy bags of feed, seen her pausing to rest more frequently as she goes about the daily business of caring for her birds. But this morning, her chickens are already fed. You can see them from your window, pecking contentedly at grain scattered with obvious care around their small yard. The feeder that Mrs. Bramble struggles to fill each morning is full to the brim, and fresh water sparkles in their drinking vessel. Most tellingly, there is a small bunch of wildflowers, marsh marigolds and meadowsweet tied to the gatepost of the chicken yard, bright as sunshine against the weathered wood. Mrs. Bramble herself emerges from her cottage. As you watch, moving slowly in the way of those whose joints have grown stiff with years, you see her stop in amazement at the sight of her well-tended flock, a hand rising to her throat in the universal gesture of pleasant surprise. She looks around carefully, searching for some sign of her anonymous benefactor, but finds only the cheerful chaos of chickens enjoying their breakfast and the sweet scent of flowers nodding in the morning breeze. Through your open window, you hear her voice carried on the river-scented air. "Well, I never. Who could have?" such kindness. Her words trail off into a murmur of wonder and gratitude that makes your own heart lift with sympathetic joy. With a certainty that seems to bypass rational thought entirely, that this kindness is connected to your weaving. The knowledge settles into your mind like a perfectly fitted puzzle piece, making sense of feelings you didn't know you were having. The golden thread the golden thread you wove into your fabric last night has manifested this morning as care for Mrs. Bramble's chickens. The thought should be absurd. Threads are threads, weaving is weaving, and chickens get fed by human hands carrying grain, not by magical intervention in the night. But looking at the evidence of your eyes, feeling the rightness of the connection in your bones, you find that you accept the impossible as easily as you accept the sunrise, or the sound of water flowing over stones. You spend the morning weaving with trembling hands, incorporating another few inches of the golden thread into your growing fabric. Each pass of the shuttle feels charged with potential, each beat of the weft like a prayer being offered to whatever spirit watches over small kindnesses and secret gifts. The cream wool seems to glow where the golden thread passes through it, creating patterns that suggest not randomness but intention, as if the cloth itself knows it is becoming part of something larger than mere fabric. As you work, your mind returns again and again to Mrs. Bramble's expression of wonder, to the sight of flowers tied with care to a gatepost, to the deeper question of how such magic could be possible. But each time your rational mind tries to dismiss what you witnessed, your hands on the shuttle remind you that miracles begin with belief, that magic starts with the willingness to accept that the world contains more beauty than logic can explain. By afternoon, you have woven perhaps 6 inches of the golden thread into your fabric, creating a band of light across the cream background that seems to pulse with its own inner rhythm. When you finally set down the shuttle and step back to examine your work, you are amazed at what you see. Not just a decorative element, but something that looks almost like writing, as if the golden thread is spelling out words in a language older than speech, more fundamental than any alphabet ever devised by human minds. The urge to continue weaving is strong, but something tells you to wait, to let this day's work settle into the fabric overnight, before adding more. You cover the loom with the soft cloth your predecessor used for the same purpose, bank the fire, and prepare for sleep with a heart full of anticipation for whatever tomorrow might bring. That night, your dreams are filled with images of golden threads stretching across the countryside, connecting cottage to cottage, heart to heart, need to the hands that can fulfill it. You see yourself weaving not just fabric but a network of kindness, each golden thread you incorporate into your cloth creating ripples of care that spread outward like rings on water. And when morning comes again, you discover that dreams and reality are woven from the same golden threads, that the magic you sensed is not diminishing but growing, finding new ways to manifest the love that your patient weaving is somehow calling into being. The second act of kindness appears with the sunrise, and your certainty that you are part of something wonderful, something that honors not just the craft of weaving, but the deeper human need to care for one another, becomes as solid and reliable as the wooden frame of your loom, as true as the song of the river flowing past your window toward the sea. Days flow into weeks as smoothly as the river flows past your window, each morning bringing new evidence of the magic your weaving is somehow creating in the world. The acts of kindness appear with the regularity of sunrise, each one small in itself, but part of a growing pattern that begins to transform the entire character of the riverside community. Old Mr. Thompson, whose arthritic hands make it difficult for him to tend his beloved rose garden, wakes to find his flower beds weeded and his bushes carefully pruned, with fresh mulch spread around their roots. The work has been done with obvious knowledge and care, no accidental damage to new growth, no careless crushing of emerging buds, just the patient attention that roses require to flourish. Young Sarah Mitchell, struggling with her first pregnancy while her husband works long hours at the mill, discovers that someone has quietly mended the sagging fence around her vegetable patch and replaced the broken gate latch that had been hanging askew for months. A basket of early vegetables, tender lettuce, spring onions, radishes bright as garnets, sits by her kitchen door, along with a small posy of forget-me-nots tied with grass. The widow Harper, whose roof leaked all through the wet spring, climbs to her attic, expecting to place more buckets under the dripping eaves, only to find that the damaged shingles have been replaced and the gutters cleared of the debris that had been blocking them for months. The repair work is invisible from the ground, but solid and waterproof, done with the skill of someone who understands that the best kindness is the kind that protects without calling attention to itself. Each morning, you watch these small miracles unfold from your cottage window, and each morning you return to your loom with growing understanding of the power flowing through your hands. The golden thread reveals itself slowly, never more than you can weave in a single session, as if it knows exactly how much magic the world can absorb at once, without overwhelming the delicate balance that allows such wonders to seem natural, inevitable, simply the way things should be. Your cloth grows under your hands, cream wool, now shot through with rivers of gold that form patterns too complex for any plan you might have devised. Sometimes the golden thread clusters into dense areas that glow like trapped sunlight. Other times it spreads thin as spider silk across the cream background, creating areas where the light seems to filter through the fabric as if through leaves. The overall effect is of something that breathes, that pulses with life, that exists as much in the realm of dream as in the solid world of wool and wooden looms. Mrs. Bramble stops by your cottage one afternoon, carrying a basket of eggs and wearing an expression of puzzled delight. She has clearly been thinking about the mysterious kindness shown to her chickens, and her visit seems driven by equal parts gratitude and curiosity. "I've been meaning to thank you," she says, settling into the chair you offer her beside the window where the light shows off her silver hair and the laugh lines that years of kindness have carved around her eyes. "For the eggs, I mean. I know it must have been you who's been helping with the chickens." You pause in your weaving, shuttle halfway through its pass, and turn to meet her gaze. "What makes you think it was me?" She smiles, but there's a shrewd intelligence in her expression that suggests she understands more than she's saying. Who else would it be? Young people these days, they're all too busy with their own lives to notice an old woman struggling with her birds. But you've got the look of someone who pays attention, who sees what needs doing and doesn't wait for someone else to do it. "I'm flattered," you say, carefully, "but I'm afraid I can't take credit for what you've been experiencing." Mrs. Bramble studies your face for a long moment. Then her gaze shifts to the loom, where the golden thread glows in the afternoon light. Her expression changes, becomes thoughtful in a way that suggests recognition dawning. "My grandmother was a weaver," she says softly. "Not just of cloth, mind you, but of other things. She used to say that some threads connect more than just one part of a fabric to another. Some threads, she claimed, could weave kindness right into the world, make care and comfort appear where they were needed most." Your hands go still on the shuttle. Did you believe her? "I was young then, full of modern ideas about what was possible and what wasn't." Mrs. Bramble's voice carries the weight of years and the wisdom that comes from learning that the world contains more magic than logic can explain. "But watching my chickens get fed by invisible hands, seeing flowers appear tied with grass rather than ribbon, finding that someone knew exactly how much grain to scatter and which treats would make the birds happiest, well, it has the feel of weaving about it, the kind of careful attention to detail that comes from working with threads." She rises to leave, but pauses at the door to look back at your loom. "Whatever you're making there, it's beautiful work. The kind that changes things, makes them better. My grandmother would have approved." After she leaves, you sit for a long time, looking at your growing fabric, thinking about Mrs. Bramble's words and the expression in her eyes when she looked at the golden thread. There had been recognition there, and something that might have been relief, the look of someone who has finally found an explanation for wonders that defied all rational understanding. That evening, you weave with new consciousness of the power flowing through your hands. Each pass of the golden thread feels like a prayer being answered, each section of the growing pattern like a promise being kept. You begin to understand that you are not just creating cloth, but participating in something much larger, a network of care that connects every cottage along the river, every garden and henhouse and leaking roof, every need that can be answered by patient hands working in darkness. The river sings its ancient song outside your window, and in its voice you hear the whispered gratitude of all those who have been touched by the kindness your weaving somehow creates. But underneath that gratitude runs a deeper current, the sense that this magic is not new but old, older than your cottage, older perhaps than the river itself. Someone has done this before you. Someone has sat at this loom, worked with golden thread, woven care into the world, with patient hands and a heart full of love for neighbours they might never meet. The knowledge settles into your bones like a half-remembered melody, familiar even though you cannot recall when you first heard it. As you cover the loom for the night and prepare for sleep, you find yourself wondering about the weaver who came before you. about the hands that shape the shuttle you hold, about the heart that first understood how thread and intention could combine to create miracles disguised as coincidence. Tomorrow, you sense, will bring answers to questions you are only beginning to know how to ask. But tonight it is enough to rest in the knowledge that you are part of something beautiful, something that honors the best of human nature, and proves that magic is not about power, but about love made manifest in the patient work of caring hands. On the morning when understanding finally blooms like flowers after rain, you wake to find the cottage filled with a light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, as if the very air has learned to glow. It takes you a moment to realize that the illumination is coming from your loom, where the golden thread you wove yesterday evening pulses with gentle radiance, each strand bright as captured sunlight. You approach the loom with the reverence due to something sacred, something that exists at the intersection of craft and miracle. In the clear morning light, the pattern created by the golden thread becomes unmistakably clear. Not random beauty, but letters, words, a message written in the ancient language of fiber and intention, for hands that remember love, for hearts that carry kindness forward. The words seem to shift and change as you watch, the golden thread rearranging itself into new messages, new meanings, as if it contains an entire library of wisdom waiting to be revealed to eyes that know how to read the true text hidden in its gleaming curves. She who weaves with golden thread weaves the dreams of those who came before. Every kindness is a thread, every thread a connection, every connection a bridge between what was and what will be. The pattern continues, hand to hand, heart to heart, until all the world is warm with the work of patient love. You reach out to touch the glowing thread, and the moment your fingers make contact, the cottage around you seems to shimmer and shift, becoming transparent, allowing you to see not just what is, but what was, layering the present moment with the accumulated memories of all who have worked at this loom before you. You see her then, clear as if she stands beside you in the morning light, a woman with gentle eyes and silver-streaked hair, her hands moving with practiced grace across a loom strung with cream-colored wool and golden thread. She wears a simple dress the color of lavender, and her face holds the particular serenity that comes to those who have found their true work in the world. "Mother," you whisper, though the word comes from some deep recognition rather than conscious memory. She turns at the sound of your voice, though you know she cannot truly hear you across the years that separate her time from yours. But her smile suggests that she feels your presence, understands somehow that the threads she is weaving are destined for your hands, that the kindness she is creating will flower again in your work. Through the golden thread's memory, you watch her weaving, not just cloth but care made manifest, love transformed into the mysterious force that fed Mrs. Bramble's chickens, mended Sarah Mitchell's fence, repaired the widow Harper's roof. You see her rising before dawn to incorporate more golden thread into her growing fabric. See her pausing in her work to look out the window at the cottage where some act of kindness is unfolding, her face bright with satisfaction at the good her patient weaving has brought into being. But you see more than just her work. You see the source of the golden thread itself, the spirit that provides it, the force that connects her heart to the hearts of all who need what she can give through the mysterious alchemy of loom and shuttle and thread that glows with its own inner light. The spirit appears as she weaves, taking shape in the morning mist that rises from the river, forming itself into the suggestion of a figure both ancient and timeless. It is not quite human, not quite something else, but unmistakably benevolent, radiating the kind of love that asks nothing for itself and gives everything to ensure that kindness continues to flow through the world like water, like light, like the golden thread that connects all generous hearts across time and distance. You understand now why the cottage felt familiar from the first moment you entered it, why your hands knew the rhythm of the loom before your mind remembered learning it. This was your mother's work, your mother's calling, your mother's partnership with the spirit that watches over all who choose to make their lives a gift to others. The cottage, the loom, the golden thread, all of it is inheritance. But inheritance of the deepest kind, not just objects, but purpose, not just property, but calling. The vision fades gradually. The golden threads glow, softening to its usual warm radiance, but the knowledge remains bright and certain in your heart. You are not the first to sit at this loom, will not be the last. You are part of a tradition that stretches back through generations of hands that understood how love could be woven into the very fabric of community life, how kindness could be cultivated and tended and spread through the patient work of those who knew the secret of turning thread into blessing. Your mother's spirit is still here, you realize, not haunting the cottage in any troubling way, but present as memory is present, as love is present, as the warmth of sun-soaked wool is present, long after the sun has moved on to warm other things. She watches through your hands as you work, guides your fingers as they learn the subtle art of incorporating golden thread into cloth, smiles through your heart as you witness the kindness that blooms in the wake of your weaving. That afternoon, as you settle into the rhythm of shuttle and thread, you feel her presence more clearly than ever before. Sometimes it seems you can almost hear her voice, offering gentle guidance about tension and pattern, sharing the accumulated wisdom of years spent at this same loom with this same purpose. But more often, her presence manifests as simply knowing, understanding without being taught when to use the golden thread and when to let the cream wool carry the pattern alone. Feeling in your bones the difference between weaving that creates mere cloth and weaving that creates connection. Thank you, you whisper to the air round the loom, to the cottage that holds so much love in its stone walls, to the river that has carried the song of this work for longer than any human memory can reach. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for showing me how to continue what you began. The golden thread pulses once with warm light, and in that pulse you feel acknowledgement, approval, the blessing of one who has passed her life's work into hands she knows will tend it with the same love, the same dedication, the same understanding that some magics are too precious to die with any single practitioner. Outside the window, the river carries the reflection of clouds toward the sea, and somewhere along its banks, acts of kindness continue to unfold. Fences mended, gardens tended, burdens lifted by invisible hands. Guided by the love you weave into cloth that glows with the accumulated warmth of all the generous hearts that have ever lived. The pattern continues, hand to hand, heart to heart, until all the world is warm with the work of patient love. As summer deepens around the cottage by the weaving river, the network of kindness spreads like ripples on water, each act of generosity inspiring others, until the entire community seems to glow with the warmth of people caring for one another. But now you begin to understand that the golden thread you weave each night doesn't just create these miracles, it reveals a pattern that was always there, waiting to be seen by eyes that know how to look for the connections that bind heart to heart across all the apparent boundaries that seem to separate, but never really divide. Mrs. Bramble, whose chickens have been faithfully tended by invisible hands for weeks now, begins leaving small gifts of her own. Fresh eggs on the doorstep of the young mother, struggling with her first baby, bunches of herbs on the windowsill of the old man, whose hands shake too much for him to harvest his own garden anymore. She never signs her name to these offerings, but her neighbors recognize the careful way she ties her herb bundles, the particular blue of the eggs from her favorite hen. Sarah Mitchell, whose fence was mended and whose garden was weeded by unknown benefactors, starts a tradition of leaving soup on the doorsteps of anyone in the village who seems to be having a difficult time. She makes it in large batches, ladling it into mason jars that she leaves with handwritten notes, thinking of you today, or hope this brings a little warmth to your evening. The soup appears as mysteriously as the other acts of kindness, and soon people begin looking forward to finding these small gifts of nourishment and care. The widow Harper, whose roof was repaired in the night, begins using her newly dry attic as a workshop, where she mends clothing for anyone who needs it. Word spreads quietly through the community that if you leave a torn garment on her garden gate, it will be returned within a few days, invisibly repaired and often improved, with small decorative touches, embroidered flower to cover a patch, ribbon trim to hide a mended seam, buttons replaced with ones more beautiful than the originals. You watch this flowering of generosity from your cottage window as you weave, understanding now that the golden thread doesn't create kindness, so much as it awakens the kindness that already exists in every human heart, waiting for permission to emerge, for examples to follow, for the simple recognition that caring for others is not burden but joy. Your own cloth grows more beautiful with each passing day, cream wool now shot through with so many golden threads that it seems to move and breathe with its own inner light. The pattern that emerges is unlike anything you have seen in any textile book or museum. Not geometric in the usual sense, but organic, flowing, suggesting connections that extend beyond the boundaries of the fabric itself. Looking at it is like looking at a map of relationships, a visualization of the invisible threads that connect every person in the Riverside community to every other person. Sometimes, in the evening light, you swear you can see faces in the pattern, not woven images. Exactly, but suggestions of features, hints of expressions, the visual equivalent of names spoken in a familiar voice. Miss Bramble's kindly smile appears in a cluster of golden threads near the center of the cloth. Sarah Mitchell's determined chin emerges from the intersection of three golden lines. The widow Harper's patient hands seem to be suggested by the way certain threads curve and cross near the fabric's edge. But it is the largest pattern, the one that encompasses all the others, that takes your breath away when you finally see it clearly. Worked in golden thread across the entire width of the cloth is the unmistakable silhouette of a woman seated at a loom, her hands reaching out to touch. Not just the threads before her, but threads that extend beyond the fabric's borders, connecting her work to work being done in other places, other times, by other hands that understand the secret of weaving love into the world. Your mother. The pattern shows your mother, but also every woman who has ever sat at this loom, every heart that has ever understood how to transform individual threads into something larger, stronger, more beautiful than its separate parts. You are part of this pattern now, your own hands becoming part of the eternal image of patient work done in service of others. The realization brings tears to your eyes, but they are tears of gratitude rather than sorrow. You understand now that you are not alone in this work, have never been alone. Every time you sit at the loom, you are surrounded by the presence of all who have done this work before you, guided by their accumulated wisdom, supported by their continuing love. As autumn approaches, and the leaves along the river begin to turn gold and scarlet, you find yourself weaving faster, driven by an urgency you don't quite understand. The golden thread appears more frequently now, sometimes whole skeins of it waiting beside the loom when you wake, as if the spirit that provides it knows that some deadline approaches, some completion draws near. Your fabric is nearly finished. You can sense it in the way the pattern seems to be gathering itself toward resolution, in the way the golden threads cluster and concentrate as if preparing for some final revelation. Soon, very soon, you will need to cut this cloth from the loom and discover what it was always meant to become, what purpose it was always meant to serve. But even as the completion of your first major work approaches, you understand that this is not an ending, but a beginning. The loom will accept new warp threads. The golden thread will continue to appear. The work of weaving kindness into the world will continue through your hands, as it has continued through the hands of others, for longer than any written history can record. The pattern continues, hand to hand, heart to heart, until all the world is warm with the work of patient love. And you are part of that pattern now, forever, your own story woven into the golden threads that connect all generous hearts across time and distance, proving that love is not just an emotion but a force, not just a feeling but a power that can transform the world one thread, one kindness, one act of care at a time. The cloth calls to you in the grey hour before dawn, pulling you from dreams of golden threads stretching across continents, connecting hearts in patterns too vast for any single mind to comprehend, but simple enough for any loving heart to understand. You rise and move to the loom with the certain knowledge that today is the day of completion, that the work your hands have been doing for months is ready to fulfill its ultimate purpose. In the pale pre-dawn light, your fabric glows with accumulated radiance, every golden thread pulsing gently as if alive, as if breathing in rhythm with your own heartbeat. The pattern is complete now, you can see it clearly, though you could not have planned such complexity, such beauty, such perfect integration of individual elements into a unified whole. It is a map of connection, a visualization of love, made manifest, a textile incarnation of the invisible bonds that hold communities together when they remember that caring for one another is the highest calling of human hearts. The cutting of the cloth from the loom feels ceremonial, sacred, each snip of the scissors marking the end of one kind of existence and the beginning of another. As the final threads are severed and the cloth falls free into your waiting hands, you feel a shift in the cottage around you, as if the completion of this work has somehow altered the very air, charged it with potential for whatever comes next. The fabric is warm in your hands, far warmer than wool should be, and lighter than its size would suggest. When you hold it up to catch the morning light streaming through the cottage windows, it becomes almost transparent, revealing layers of pattern within pattern, meaning within meaning, connection within connection. It is beautiful beyond any words you know, but its beauty is not its purpose. Its purpose is written in the golden threads themselves, in the way they seem to reach out beyond the fabric's borders, seeking the connections they were always meant to make. You know, without knowing how you know that the cloth is meant to be shared, not kept. Its power lies not in possession, but in distribution. Not in hoarding, but in giving away. The understanding comes to you as naturally as breathing, as inevitable as the sunrise that is even now painting the river gold outside your window. You begin to cut. The scissors move through the golden threaded fabric as easily as if it were made of light rather than wool. Each piece you separate retaining its own glow, its own warmth, its own portion of the larger pattern, while remaining connected to the whole in ways that transcend physical boundaries. Soon your table is covered with small squares of cream wool shot through with golden thread, enough pieces for every household in the Riverside community, each one unique, each one carrying its own particular message of care and connection. Mrs. Bramble receives the first piece, of course. You wrap it carefully in plain brown paper and tie it with a grass ribbon. Then leave it on her doorstep before the sun has fully risen. When she finds it an hour later, you watch from your window as she unwraps it with careful fingers, her face transforming with wonder as she sees the golden threads that seem to spell out her name in the language of light and love. Sarah Mitchell's piece goes to her during the afternoon, when she is hanging laundry in her garden and the baby is napping peacefully in his cradle under the apple tree. You approach openly this time, no longer needing to work in secret, and place the wrapped fabric in her hands with the simple words, "For all the kindness you've shared." The widow Harper receives hers at twilight. When the golden threads glow brightest in the fading light, she holds the fabric to her chest and closes her eyes, and you swear you can see tears of recognition on her cheeks as she feels the warmth that radiates from the wool, the love that has been woven into every strand. By the end of the week, every household in the Riverside community has received its piece of the golden cloth, and with each delivery you notice changes, small at first, then growing larger as the fabric's influence spreads. People linger longer when they meet on the Riverside path, actually stopping to ask about each other's families, their health, their hopes. Neighbors who have lived side by side for years without more than polite greetings begin to discover common interests, shared challenges, opportunities to help one another in ways that have nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the simple human recognition that we are all walking the same difficult and beautiful path through life. The golden thread has awakened something that was always there, waiting. Each piece of fabric serves as a reminder, a physical representation of the invisible connections that bind the community together. People keep their squares in special places, on mantelpieces, in sewing baskets, folded carefully in bureau drawers. But more importantly, they carry the memory of receiving them, the understanding that someone saw them as worthy of such a gift, such care, such visible proof that they matter to their neighbors. As winter approaches and the last leaves fall from the willows along the river, you begin stringing a new warp on your loom, preparing for the next cloth, the next pattern, the next opportunity to weave kindness into the world. The golden thread appears as reliably as ever, though now you understand its source, not just the spirit that your mother knew and worked with, but the accumulated love of everyone who has ever recognized the sacred responsibility of caring for others, the eternal presence of all who understand that we are here to help each other find our way home. Your cottage has become a place of pilgrimage, though the visitors come quietly, respectfully drawn by stories of the weaver who can somehow stitch kindness into cloth, love into fiber, connection into the very substance of fabric itself. They come seeking healing, seeking hope, seeking proof that magic still exists in a world that often seems too harsh for wonder. You welcome them as your mother must have welcomed those who came to her, with tea and understanding, with patient listening, and the gentle assurance that their own capacity for kindness is far greater than they imagine. You show them how to recognize the golden threads in their own lives, the moments when they choose compassion over indifference, generosity over selfishness, love over fear. You help them understand that they are all weavers, whether they work with literal thread or simply with the choices they make each day about how to treat the other souls they encounter on their journey through this brief and precious life. The loom waits for your hands each morning, and the golden thread appears each evening, and the work continues as it has always continued, will always continue, connecting heart to heart in patterns too beautiful for any single person to see completely, but simple enough for every loving heart to understand and join. You are a weaver now, heir to a tradition older than written history, guardian of a magic that transforms not through power but through patience, not through force but through the quiet persistence of hands. but understand how separate threads become stronger when they work together, how individual acts of kindness weave themselves into a fabric of care that can wrap the whole world in warmth. Years pass like shuttles moving through the warp, each day adding another thread to the ever-growing fabric of kindness that spreads outward from your cottage by the weaving river. The golden thread appears more readily now, sometimes pooling beside your loom like captured sunlight, sometimes weaving itself through your dreams, until you wake with your hands already knowing the pattern they need to create that day. The riverside community has become a place of legend, spoken of in neighboring villages, as somewhere that remembers the old ways of caring for one another, where neighbors still know each other's names, and children still grow up understanding that they are part of something larger than their individual families. Visitors come from distant places to see the village where kindness flows like water, where help appears before it is asked for, where no one goes hungry or cold or unloved. But you know the truth. The magic was never yours alone. The golden thread simply awakened what was always there, reminded people of the connections that bind all hearts together, gave them permission to act on the impulses toward kindness that live in every human soul. Your weaving was catalyst, not cause, inspiration rather than obligation. Mrs. Bramble has become your closest confidant, though she never asks directly about the source of your golden thread. Instead, she brings you tea and stories, sitting by your loom in the afternoons to share memories of her grandmother the weaver. Tales of other women who understood that some kinds of work transform the world simply by being done with love and intention. My grandmother used to say, Mrs. Bramble tells you one autumn afternoon, as you work a particularly complex pattern, that there's a golden thread running through every human life, connecting us to everyone we've ever helped, and everyone who's ever helped us. Most people can't see it, she said, but some folk are born with the gift of making it visible, of weaving it into things that help others remember they're not alone. You pause in your weaving to look at her, this wise woman whose chickens were the first to benefit from your mysterious craft. Do you think that's what I'm doing, child? She says with a smile that holds depths of understanding. I think you're doing exactly what you were born to do, and I think your mother is watching every stitch, proud as anything to see her daughter carrying on the work. The mention of your mother brings the familiar warmth of connection, the sense that she is indeed present in ways that transcend physical existence. Sometimes in the deepest concentration of weaving, you feel her hands guiding yours, her voice whispering advice about tension and pattern, her love flowing through your fingers into the cloth that grows beneath your touch. But it is not only your mother's presence you feel. As the years pass and your skill deepens, you begin to sense the spirits of all the weavers who have worked at this loom, all the hearts that have understood the secret of turning thread into blessing. They gather around you as you work, an invisible community of women whose lives were dedicated to the quiet magic of caring for others, whose legacy lives on in every act of kindness their work inspired. The golden thread tells their stories as you weave, glimpses of other times, other places, other looms where similar work was done. You see medieval weavers working by candlelight, their tapestries carrying prayers for protection over entire kingdoms. You see pioneer women on distant frontiers, weaving coverlets that somehow ensured their families survived harsh winters and harder circumstances. You see weavers in wartime, their cloth carrying messages of hope across battlefields and borders, connecting separated lovers, divided families, isolated communities. Each vision teaches you something new about the craft you have inherited. Not just the technical knowledge of shuttle and heddle and beat, but the deeper wisdom of how intention shapes reality, how love given form can alter the very fabric of existence. You learn that the golden thread is not unique to your time or place, but appears wherever hearts are open enough to receive it, hands skilled enough to work with it, souls brave enough to trust in the power of kindness to transform the world. Your own cloth becomes more complex with each passing season, incorporating not just golden thread but fibers dyed with local plants, wool from sheep you know by name, patterns that tell the story of your riverside community in colors and textures that speak to the heart rather than the eye. Each piece you complete finds its way to the hands that need it most, sometimes through gifts you make consciously, sometimes through paths too mysterious to track but too perfect to be coincidence. A young mother receives a baby blanket woven with golden thread just as her infant falls ill, and the child recovers wrapped in its warmth. An elderly man struggling with loneliness finds a golden threaded scarf on his doorstep the morning after his wife's funeral, and somehow wearing it helps him remember that love doesn't end with death, but transforms, continuing to offer comfort in new forms. A troubled teenager discovers a golden threaded wall hanging in her bedroom after a particularly difficult day, and looking at its patterns helps her understand that she is part of something larger, more beautiful, more forgiving than she ever imagined. You begin to understand that you are not just creating individual pieces, but contributing to a vast eternal tapestry that encompasses all acts of kindness, all expressions of love, all moments when one soul reaches out to help another. Every thread you weave becomes part of this larger pattern, this ongoing creation that connects all generous hearts across time and space. The loom has become more than furniture. It is an altar, a gateway, a bridge between the world of ordinary objects and the realm where intentions become realities, where love takes form as golden thread and kindness manifests as cloth that carries healing in its very fibers. You tend it with the reverence due to something sacred, understanding that you are not its owner but its guardian, its servant, its partner in the ancient work of weaving light into darkness, connection into isolation, hope into despair. As evening settles over the cottage and the river sings its eternal song of water finding its way to the sea, you cover your loom with the soft cloth that has protected it through generations of weavers. Tomorrow will bring new golden thread, new patterns, new opportunities to participate in the miraculous work of helping souls recognize their connection to one another. But tonight, it is enough to rest in the knowledge that you are part of something beautiful, something eternal, something that proves again and again that love is not just an emotion, but a force, not just a feeling, but a power that can transform the world one thread, one kindness, one perfect stitch at a time. On the morning when your calling expands beyond the cottage walls, you wake to find a young woman standing hesitantly by your garden gate, her hands trembling slightly as she clutches a worn basket containing skeins of wool in colors that speak of careful saving, of hope mixed with uncertainty. She cannot be more than 20, with eyes that hold the particular sadness of those who have known loss too early, and hands that bear the calluses of someone who has already learned that survival requires more than hope. "I've heard," she says when you open the door, her voice barely above a whisper, "that you teach the old ways, the weaving that makes things better." Her name is Elena, and her story unfolds slowly as you share morning tea by the loom, her eyes never quite leaving the golden threads that catch the light streaming through your cottage windows. Her grandmother was a weaver, taught her the basics before passing away the previous winter. Now Elena struggles to care for her younger siblings while their parents work long hours in the distant city, and she dreams really that weaving might provide not just income, but something more, something her grandmother hinted at, but never had time to fully explain. She used to say, Elena tells you, that some weavers could put their hearts into their work, make cloth that carried more than just colour and pattern. I thought it was just stories the kind grandmothers tell, but then I heard about this place, about fabric that glows and kindness that appears in the night, and I wondered, you see yourself in her uncertain hope. Remember your own first encounter with the golden thread, the way understanding dawned slowly like sunrise over water. Without conscious decision, you find yourself moving to the storage chest where you keep the wool your mother left, bringing out skeins of cream-coloured fibre that seems to glow with its own inner light. The first thing you must understand, you tell her, as you begin setting up a small practice loom, is that the magic isn't in the thread itself, but in the intention you weave into it. The golden thread appears only when the heart is ready, when the hands work not for profit or praise but from genuine desire to help others. Elena nods eagerly, her fingers already reaching for the shuttle you place beside the small loom. How will I know when I'm ready? How will I know if the golden thread will come to me? You'll know, you assure her, thinking of your mother's presence, of Mrs. Bramble's wisdom, of all the signs that have guided your own journey. The thread appears when we stop seeking it for ourselves and start weaving for others. It comes when we understand that our hands are not our own, but instruments of something larger, something that flows through us rather than from us. You spend the morning teaching her the basic patterns, the rhythms that will become second nature with practice, the subtle adjustments of tension and beat that transform mere technique into art. But more than technique, you teach her to listen to the sound of the shuttle moving through the warp, to the song of the threads as they settle into place, to the deeper rhythm that underlies all weaving and connects it to the ancient work of caring for others. My grandmother's hands, Elena says during a quiet moment, her own hands pausing in their work to touch the cream-coloured wool. They always smelled like lavender and wool, and when she wove, it was like watching someone pray. Not church praying, but the kind that happens when you're so focused on doing something good that you forget yourself completely. That's exactly right, you tell her. Feeling your mother's presence in the cottage, the approval of all who have done this work before. Weaving at its highest level is a form of prayer, a way of putting love into the world through the work of our hands. When we weave with that understanding, the golden thread finds us. By afternoon, Elena has created her first small piece. Nothing fancy, just plain weaving cream wool, but executed with care and attention that speaks of natural talent waiting to be developed. More importantly, she has begun to understand what you mean about intention, about the difference between weaving that creates mere cloth and weaving that creates connection. Take this home, you tell her, wrapping her first piece in plain brown paper. Keep it somewhere you'll see it often, somewhere it can remind you of what your hands can do when they work with love. Practice with the wool I've given you, but don't worry about the golden thread yet. Trust the process. Trust your grandmother's teachings that live in your muscle memory. Trust that the right time will come. She leaves with tears in her eyes, clutching the small wrapped package like a talisman, like proof that magic is possible even in the most ordinary circumstances. You watch her walk away down the riverside path, her step lighter than when she arrived, her shoulders straighter with the weight of new purpose. That evening, as you work at your own loom, you find yourself weaving with unusual intensity, driven by awareness that your role is expanding, that the cottage by the weaving river is becoming not just a place where magical cloth is created, but a school where the ancient knowledge is passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. The golden thread appears more abundantly than ever before, as if approving of this new direction, this multiplication of the work through teaching others to recognize their own capacity for creating wonder. Over the following weeks, more students find their way to your door. Word spreads quietly through the network of those who know how to listen for such things. Whispered conversations between wise women, messages passed along with herbal remedies and traditional recipes, stories told around fires, where people still remember that the world contains more magic than logic can explain. They come seeking different things. Some want to learn income-generating skills, others hope for healing from grief or trauma. Still others are drawn by curiosity about the legends that surround your cottage. But they all share something essential: hands that remember the pleasure of creating beauty, hearts that recognize the deep satisfaction of work done, not just for personal gain but for the good of others. You teach them as you were taught, through example rather than lecture, through patient guidance rather than rigid instruction, through the gradual understanding that develops when theory and practice work together under the influence of love. Each student brings their own gifts to the work. Elena's intuitive understanding of color and pattern, young Marcus's mathematical precision that creates new variations on traditional designs, grandmother Angie's lifetime of experience with plants that yields unprecedented colors and textures in the dyed wool. But most importantly, you teach them to recognize the golden thread when it appears in their own work, sometimes literally, as glowing fiber that emerges from the basket when hands and heart are perfectly aligned with the work of caring for others, sometimes metaphorically, as the moment when their weaving transcends mere craft and becomes a vessel for the love that connects all living things. The cottage becomes a place of pilgrimage for a different reason now. Not just to witness miracles, but to learn how to participate in creating them. Your students return to their own communities, carrying more than just technical skills. They carry the understanding that their hands can be instruments of healing, their work a form of service, their craft a way of weaving kindness into the world wherever they live and work. The pattern continues, hand to hand, heart to heart, spreading outward like ripples on water, proving that the most powerful magic is not the kind that amazes observers, but the kind that transforms participants, that turns ordinary people into agents of grace, individual weavers into a community of care, that spans distances and differences to create a fabric of connection strong enough to hold the world together in warmth and love. Let the cottage by the weaving river fade now around your sleeping form, its stone walls releasing you with the blessing of all who have learned that the most powerful magic lies not in grand gestures, but in patient hands working with love, day after day, thread by thread, kindness by kindness. Feel yourself floating gently back across the years, over the paths where students have carried their newly learned skills to distant places, past the gardens where flowers bloom a little brighter, because they grow in soil enriched by the invisible network of care that spreads outward from every loving heart. The golden thread settles into your dreams, like starlight weaving itself through darkness, carrying with it the understanding that we are all connected by invisible strands of kindness, all part of a pattern larger and more beautiful than any single life can see completely. You carry with you now the knowledge that every act of generosity adds another thread to this eternal tapestry. Every moment of compassion strengthens the weave that holds all souls together in the fabric of love. Feel your breathing slow to match the rhythm of shuttles moving through looms in distant cottages, your heartbeat settling into the patient pulse of those who understand that the most meaningful work is often the quietest, the most transformative magic often the most subtle. The loom song fades to whisper, but its teaching remains bright in your chest, that every thread matters, every hand that works with love adds something irreplaceable to the great weaving that connects all life. Alina's voice whispers one last time through the gathering darkness, no longer uncertain but strong with the confidence of one who has found her calling. Remember that we are all weavers, whether we work with literal thread or simply with the choices we make each day. Remember that golden thread appears wherever hearts are open to giving rather than getting. Remember that the pattern continues through us, in us, around us, forever. Let this truth settle into your bones like warmth from hearthfire, like the comfort of fabric woven with intention and love. Feel it flowing through your veins like the knowledge that you are part of something larger than yourself, something that includes every act of kindness ever offered, every hand that has ever worked to create beauty rather than destroy it, every heart that has chosen connection over isolation. The riverside cottage grows quiet around your sleeping form, but in that quiet lives the eternal presence of all who have understood that magic begins with love, that transformation starts with the willingness to serve something larger than personal desire, that the golden thread of connection runs through every life, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be woven into the work of caring hands.